Thank you, good people, for your tots and pairs, and welcome back to another episode of the Nonprofits. We are recording this episode on May 12th, 2020, to air on May 16th, halfway through Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and coming right up to the end of National Nurses Week. That being said, let me introduce our hosts for this week. I am Malty, and to my left, please help me welcome our special guest host, Katie Stewart.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Welcome.
Speaking of National Nurses Week, welcome Jena Miyu.
Thank you. I'm
And
back.
on our far left, our anchor, Laura Magee.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So, Jena, since you are our resident nurse, can you tell us a little bit about National Nurses Week?
Yeah, I sure can. It's something, I've been a nurse myself for several years. So it's something, especially in the time that we have lived in the last year or so, weighs heavy, but also very encouraging and fulfilling. With this, every year annually, pretty much there is a type of theme surrounding Nurses Week, which leads up to the official International Nurses Day, which ends on May 12th, which happens to be the birth date of pretty much I would guess you could say the founder of modern nursing, which is Florence Nightingale. So all my fellow nurses out there, you know your nursing history, you'll be familiar. But pretty much the theme for this year is Nurses, a Voice to Lead. And this is particularly towards a vision for future healthcare. And just before we started recording, I just kind of looked up what little tidbit the International Council of Nursing website had to officially say about the theme for this year. And I'll quote it, in which it is about focusing on the changes changes and challenges as far as innovations in nursing and how this will ultimately shape the future of healthcare. And so, not, so pointedly referencing the ordeal of the pandemic, but ushering in and encouraging nurses to have a stronger voice when providing services for patients. So,
Yeah. Thank you. So before I forget, let me get our disclaimer out of the way. This show is a product of the ACA, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the separation of religion and government and promoting positive atheism. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to this channel and click the like button below. Set the notifications to on so you'll always be notified for new episodes and premieres. We will be premiering this as all other nonprofit episodes on Sundays at 3 p.m. Central. So we've made a little bit of a milestone recently in that we're now over 8,000 subscribers. Once we hit,
Yay!
yes, once we hit 10,000 subscribers, we can start doing fundraisers. So that would be really cool. I think we're at 8.2, 8.4. So we're getting there, and the trend is up. But let's keep that going. If you can get call your friends, your family members, coworkers, the neighbor that you don't like, everyone, please let them know to come visit us, and so we can get those fundraisers going. I would be remiss if I didn't remind you that we have a new YouTube channel. Check out the Atheist Experience Network. It's a one-stop shop for all your ACA shows and in podcast form, and it's all on one channel. So you can subscribe at tiny.cc/AEN podcasts and to listen to the episode of the Nonprofits Atheist Experience, Truth Wanted, all of the other ACA shows, so you won't miss a single episode. And you can join our fan and social media outlets. You can find most of the Nonprofits hosts on the Atheist Community of Discord and going to tiny.cc/ACA Discord. On our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/nonprofitslive. If you would like to support the show monetarily, you can do so by becoming a Patreon of the Nonprofits at patreon.com/the Nonprofits. And you support the ACA by shopping at smile.amazon.com and then selecting the Atheist Community of Austin as your beneficiary. A small amount of the funds will go to you, does not change your price on any of your shopping, but the ACA will get a little bit of a kick, and we greatly appreciate it. We value your feedback. Tell us what you like, what you don't like, what we got right, what I got wrong. I always get something wrong. And you can do that at nonprofits at theatheist-community.org. As with all of our shows, the links to today's topics, news we discuss will be available in the descriptions below. Please feel free to double check us, pause the video, go read the articles. I think we got some good ones for you today. Don't take our word for it, please. Dig into it yourself. All right, so that being said, what do we got today? We've got 4 different things to speak on. We have some teaching the good of slavery. We've got that the Texas Nativity may finally be getting some competition. We've got a convicted fraudster and televangelist, guess who? Jim Bakker, may be heading for bankruptcy. And in our looking back, we'll be talking about one of the fathers of skepticism, I would say, Bertrand Russell. So to begin with, who's going to start us out? Laura, could you tell us a little bit about what's going on in Louisiana?
Awesome. Yes, I can. Okay, so this is more than just an article. It's actually a series of articles that we looked at regarding Louisiana State Representative Ray Garofalo. And he put forth legislation that would force schools to teach a curriculum that sort of, to put it bluntly, whitewashes American history. And it makes slavery seem a lot more positive than it really was. And he also,
Yeah.
What's that?
No, news to me. Sorry.
Just so you know. And the idea that they're putting forth is that teaching slavery as a bad concept is divisive and it causes racism. And so their argument is sort of the opposite of what we would think. Luckily, it was not met very well. There's a lot of criticism to it, but that is what we're talking about for this first article. What's most poignant about it is that the opposition was saying there's really no good that we should teach with slavery, right? There's just nothing to it that we can spin it as positive. We got to call it like it is. So what do you guys think about that?
I would love to give someone a chance to say what the good side is, because he said, oh yeah, we should teach all sides of slavery, the good, the bad, the ugly. What is the good though? What? Someone tell me. What?
Yeah, I would love to see someone actually demonstrate that and stand by that and represent it very well. And, fine, I'll sit and listen. But obviously there is no good. And it's so funny because I recall listening, because this type of bill was presented sometime late last month, right? So there's a clip that you can kind of find on YouTube where there's a bit of an exchange where this Representative Garofalo presents this bill to this, just to have it be met on the state Congress floor for a vote. And so there's this exchange between him and, I believe, if I butcher this representative's name, Hifferty, where he tries to vaguely explain an already vague bill, trying to, uphold similar notions that we saw when our former president tried to enact another type of legislation where it was knocking back critical race theory. So that exchange was quite interesting.
Yeah, I didn't know that the Great Orange one had on the November 2nd, in 2020, penned an executive order called the 1776 Commission to Install Patriotic Education. And this was, I think that these bills, like this one in Louisiana, are kind of stemming off of that, or at least the article we read really did try to put that forward as a possibility.
There's a lot of similarities, though, isn't there? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Oh, truly.
I think that the wording of the Trump bill even sounded very much like nationalism, indoctrination versus just teaching a prideful version of our history. It really sounded like we're going to indoctrinate our children into a way of thinking. Like that is
Mhm.
frightening. Um,
I liked
So
what,
one-
or it was interesting what you said about, yeah, teaching that racism, or I'm sorry, that slavery is bad is somehow causes racism, but not, enslaving people based on race. That's not racist, but teaching that that's bad is racist.
Yeah.
Well,
right, and that eliminating that teaching causes the end of racism, and it kind of brings us all together. I'm kind of wondering how, like maybe you're not teaching white children to appreciate fully what other children of other races have gone through, but at the same time, you're also teaching the children of those races that what their ancestors went through, what their forefathers went through, wasn't a big deal or it wasn't important. So I'm really trying to wrap my mind around why that's a good positive message to teach, because these children are not
yeah,
stupid. They're
wouldn't you
getting
be
it from their
destined to
families.
repeat it if you don't, I don't know, it should be obvious this is a bad thing, but if you're just not,
Yeah. Well,
I don't know.
I'm happy that it did not get out of the cabinet meeting and onto the main floor.
Mhm.
I mean, it was a 7-7 tie, so it did
Yeah.
not move
Yeah,
forward.
that's what was most depressing about it, is it wasn't just slaughtered and killed right there. Like it was a
Mhm.
very near vote is what stopped it. And
That was kind of baffling too. Like, why was this close, or why was there a tie? God.
Louisiana.
I want to know what those 7
Yeah.
people that voted for it, what their justifications were, besides just this vague sort of, teaching slavery causes divisiveness with no
Well,
demonstration of how.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, it's
if
the
I could go,
notion.
please,
Oh, sure.
Jenna.
It's the notion that, if we keep bringing up things that happened in our past, then we will never get over it. And people, want to continuously want to talk about it and talk about it until it makes it appear that, the white man is just completely wrong and bad, and oh, they should, say they're sorry for the shit that they didn't do, but what, other white people did way back when. And to think of this, like, to imply that. And it's so funny because there's been I've heard this type of stuff for years without there even being a bill, is that same kind of statements, they're, you know are just outrageous myths about what occurred during the time when slavery was lawful. The myth that, house slaves were treated better than outside slaves. No.
Right.
The fact that the Civil War was ended or constructed for the main purpose of ending slavery. No. And to think that the treatment of slaves from certain plantation owners, that, oh, a plantation owner was only beating a slave if they were just really, really mean and cruel, but other slaves, they weren't given that treatment. First of all, how would you know? How do you account for all that information?
Yeah.
Historians have since then reported things like this. There have been stories from slaves that came out of them as free persons telling these stories of, the treatment and the conditions and what occurred.
Not
Well,
only
So,
that, go ahead, Malty.
oh, no, no, no,
well,
yeah.
I'm wondering if some of these lawmakers and the Satsuma that would be king were kind of put on the back foot when, like, the New York Times published the 1619 project. And, this was the 400th year anniversary of African slaves being imported into the mainland English colonies, right? And so there's been a sea change where it's been laid bare, and this is actually being talked about openly. And so I think maybe what we're seeing is some people really not liking that and wanting to put it, for lack of a better term, back in the closet.
And to further that point, that is also an additional myth about, there being the first slaves welcomed in 1619. That's
Sure.
incorrect, because African people were actually brought over here around the mid to early to mid 1500s. Is that 15th century? 1500s.
Oh.
I said that right. And so they were brought here much earlier than what this demonstration of the New York Times, 1619 project is trying to commemorate. Yes, I see that they're trying to reflect on a bit of history, but that just furthers the rhetoric that we're not telling and reporting true history. We're not telling and reporting and teaching kids, adults even, that this is what actually happened. This is the time that it happened. And slavery was not, there is no good. There are certain events in our history, whether it be, bear with me, Nazism and everything that happened with that, and certain wars that were established purely out of just greed, and of course slavery. That certain events in our history have no positive sides at all. So to display a bill to say, oh, we can't teach people, if you're going to teach them all the bad, we got to tell them the good too. There is no good. There's nothing good about that.
And there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with teaching that message. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, as proud Americans who are proud of our heritage and proud of our history, we made some blanking mistakes. And these are the mistakes. And these are things that now, as Americans who are alive today, we are not going to repeat those mistakes. And we are not going to allow those
Mhm.
mistakes to dictate our social behavior. It's because it still is. Racism is still alive and well and all over the nation, right? So we have to be able to teach not only that there was nothing good about it, but that it does still need to be talked about. Like you had said earlier, Jenna, about how people are afraid that we're going to just keep talking about it and just keep talking about it. But we just keep talking about World War II and Nazism, and we just keep talking about like um, Alexander the Great and his exploits and colonialism and all kinds of different historical concepts that are now
Yeah,
eking hundreds of years back or thousands of years back. We kind of have to. And this is a
absolutely.
lot fresher than all of those things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what significant part of history have we ever just agreed to stop talking about?
Right? Like we put that to bed.
Yeah.
Let's just leave it alone.
Some of the
Right.
wording of this bill is so problematic.
Mm.
That concepts of metok I can't pronounce it, meritocracy, or traits such as strong work ethic are racist or sexist and were created by a particular race. You cannot say anything like that. That the concepts of capitalism, free markets, or working for a private party in exchange for wages are racist or sexist or oppressive to any given race. I mean, you would not be able to teach anything that would bump up against that in K through 12 and university.
Right. So the
So
whole idea of
anything,
critical thinking out the window.
mhm. Oh,
Basically.
anything like glass ceilings for women or for minorities, anything like that? No, that's something that could not be talked about. So wow.
Well,
Yeah,
that's just sexist. So
Well, and
absolutely.
what's
Mhm.
interesting is, I mean, even though the wage gap is starting to decrease, there still is a wage
Mhm.
gap, and there still are great
Yes.
disparities between different races and different genders in regards to like wealth and success and everything. And so that's not something that was in our past that we're over that we shouldn't talk about anymore. Like, let's just put that to bed. That is something that's still occurring right here, right now. So to put
Yeah.
Hmm.
words into curriculum that says, like I wrote down the quote, it would bar giving students or employees information, just information that teaches, advocates, acts upon, or promotes divisive concepts. To not even be able to talk about it and discuss it in a critical manner
Yeah.
is, in my opinion, incredibly dangerous.
Mhm.
Yeah, this begs a question because, there we lately the way most people kind of gravitate to news is during like these late night shows. Popular comedians are very vocal about applying their comedy expertise to reporting what's going on factually, and no less, to their audiences. Stephen Colbert is really up on that, Trevor Noah, and various others. And I see this, I see the good as far as providing entertainment and knowledge. Hey, that's in these times, that's actually very fruitful. But then it begs a question as how far a person can comment and say about certain situations or events, or certain racial or bigoted or sexist stereotypes that I they're trying to catch the eye and get a little chuckle out of us, but they're demonstrating unfounded, blanketed, stereotypical racist responses within their skill set, i.e., there is this one particular, I guess she is a comedian. I guess she hosts a show. I'm vaguely familiar, known as a Chelsea Handler. She had this type of Netflix docu-series special of 2016, where it was like a 4-part series, and one of the episodes featured or was basically entitled Chelsea on Racism. I probably butchered that title, but basically it was about her visiting a local area. I believe this was pre Trump being the president. But she visited Tallahassee, Alabama, and she met with, and during this particular day, there was a Civil War reenactment going on. Great. That's something we, don't let go, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to react this war we lost. Yay. Anyways, so she approaches this crowd, and in particular, this one older woman, asking her various questions about, slavery and why they, host this annual type of enactment every year and the purposes of it. And this older woman, thoughtfully, it's the age old, oh no, I have a black friend too, where she's like, there was good in slavery, and I don't hate black people. I practice my heritage, blah blah blah. And Big Mama, she goes to our church and she's black and we love her. Really?
Yeah.
So, and then, same question to an older gentleman that was, garbed in, reenactment clothing, stating, the further point of, the good parts of slavery. Actually, what I had a reference about the differences between in-house slavery versus outside, how, the in-home slaves were treated much nicer because, they're under the roof and everything, whatever. There's so much
Yeah, it kind
ugly
of makes me
behind
sick to my stomach to hear that.
it is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
It's
basic housing, things like that.
Oh,
yeah.
man.
Yeah.
They
Uh,
had a little cot. They were fed.
well,
All
you
good.
know, if you want your farm equipment to work properly, you you need to. The reason I say this is because I am paraphrasing one of the answers that Chelsea got from one of these interactment
Yeah.
people.
Oh, man.
That
See,
that
now
he
I
was
gotta
make.
watch this documentary. It sounds like it'd make me angry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Good.
we've
So
got
that
a. Go ahead.
I was gonna say
Just
that kind of
I
almost
agree.
brings this whole article full circle with what you were saying. Like when people say stuff like that, that demonstrates that we need better education about what racism is and what racist remarks are. Because to say, "Oh, it's okay, I'm not racist, I have a black friend," that statement is inherently racist. Like because
Yeah.
you're now saying this person belongs in this own separate category because of their skin color, but it's okay because they're my friend, right? Like to not
Mhm.
understand that there is some inherent racism and even just a what they think is just a benign remark like that, it just shows how much we need this education and how much we need to keep having the conversation.
Yeah, I
Really.
agree. All right, so moving on. So Jenna, were you going to describe what we're moving on to the next article? The
Yes.
freedom from religion.
Oh, yes, our good old friends at FFRF, breaking news for them, a very good victory, a major court victory against, the good old Texas Governor Abbott,
Yay.
to where, yeah, right. I think
It's
this type of court case went on for several years, actually. I believe 8 or 9 years, sometime December of 2015, I think.
Yep.
And so basically, the FFRF wanted to display a non-religious nativity scene, in a sense, where it featured, the separate Statue of Liberty in the middle, various, I believe it was Benjamin Franklin, and some of the founders, basically, of America, over each other, are standing next to each other, in a sense, as kind of a mirrored demonstration of the actual Christian nativity scene. So, not but 3 days after they placed that at the Texas Capitol building, that's where it was located. Certain religious members, i.e., this particular gentleman who happened to be the chair at that time, and then current Governor Abbott, found, such disgust and took such offense to such a immoral display of non-religious gobbledygook. So he ushered and posed to have it removed, and it was. And so FFRF took them to court. Lo and behold, as of either earlier this week or last week, they won their case. Congrats. Pretty much enacting, their First Amendment rights. To basically, if religious people have the free speech or willingness or freedom to display their religious things, why not? They're doing the similar thing. So
Mm,
Mhm.
yeah. Anyone else have something to say about
I
how?
I'm always happy to see a win from FFRF. Always. It seems to me that either nobody gets to have a religious display or everybody does. Otherwise, it's
mhm.
not neutral.
Right.
And I mean, if it's not neutral, then do we have free? Like, do we have the freedom to express, or do only a subset of us do?
Well, if you look at Governor Abbott's work, what he's
Yeah.
done, I think the second would be the correct answer to your question there, Katie. It really did bother me when I just looked up like some current things, laws, or bills that he is trying to support.
Mhm.
And we're looking at here. He is, oh, come on now. Here we go. March 5th, 2021. He is supporting Senate Bill 12, which should prohibit social media companies from censoring Texans based on the viewpoints they express. And then in 2019, Bill 18, to create disciplinary sanctions for students who interfere with free speech activities of others on campuses. So, in one side, he's saying, "Hey, if Nazis want to come to campus and want to,
Yeah.
push their stuff, if someone wants to come there with a Bible and a bullhorn and stand on campus, that's fine. But if the Freedom from Religion Foundation wants to put a nativity scene up that talks about the true founding of this nation,
Yeah.
then it takes 6 years and multiple court cases for them to say, no, you really can't do that. I'd read the it's just fucking hypocritical.
Yeah.
The injunction that the judge wrote. Did anyone read that? Because I mean, there was definitely some interesting nuggets
I read the
in
first
it.
few pages, but I didn't get all the
Yeah.
way through it. But
Hmm.
I still kind of got the impression that the courts were more supportive of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. I just think there's a lot of like politics and stuff involved. So I actually liked seeing how the courts supported them and seeing what the court's
Mhm.
justification was for supporting them. Yeah, now why it took 6 years, that's a little bit ridiculous.
It's a
But
tough call. To be fair, I mean, they get to
yeah, I
have
mean
the
it is.
replay. Do they get to though? This is tough.
And I think
Right.
there
I
was
don't
a
know
lot
how
of
we're gonna decide.
technicalities too. Like I know that they had like changed the wording, like they had made it to where it's like, oh no, we're not upset at them for this thing. Now we're gonna change the wording of how we can do our displays to make it seem like they're breaking the rules. So I know the courts had to go and look at that again and
Yeah.
again determine, oh no, even with your changed wording, trying to smuggle in wording that makes the Freedom from Religion Foundation wrong, we're still gonna side with them.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
So, and I
Mhm.
was impressed with that too with the courts, that they upheld it multiple times and that they made the choice to grant even further protections. So, that
Yes.
to me was a pretty big win.
Yeah. It made me think since this happened to occur Christmas time where this was their non-religious nativity scene, I guess you could say, was erected. It's furthering their dialogue on the war on Christmas and how
Yeah.
the secular immoral population of this country is trying to push out God from our schools and our churches even and everything else. And I'm like, come on. You know, you're arguing two things that it's not rooted in the construction of this country. For one, you're arguing that everything that's not Christian should not be displayed because it's immoral and it goes against the founding of this nation. And then two, you're arguing that this nation was fucking founded on the Christian religion, and it's not. Founders then they purposely moved themselves from the UK to
Mhm.
escape all that religious persecution and create a nation where during that time of enlightenment, yes, maybe some had were deists or had some type of faith, but that's not something that is inherently Christian.
Mm.
What I thought was kind of interesting about this is sort of the double standard, where it's like we want to be able to have the nativity and display it publicly. We want to be able to have the Ten Commandments, for example, and display them publicly.
Mhm.
But as soon as a different religion wants to display something publicly, now it's offensive. Now it's divisive. Now, like one thing that they had said about the pagan nativity was that it was offensive and making a mockery of the Christian nativity. Um, and I kind of wonder, like, why is that double standard there? Like, why is it okay for you to display your beliefs, but it's not okay for somebody else to display their beliefs? And couldn't
Yeah.
I just say the same thing and say that nativity of Jesus there, that is a mockery to the Jewish people who didn't accept Jesus as their Messiah, right? Aren't you
Mhm.
Sure.
mocking all the people who don't accept Christianity? Like, sure, you're in the majority for Texas, but aren't you then mocking the minority and putting it in their faces? So to use that kind of argument, like I kind of wonder why that argument isn't more like turned back around on them, like the double standard more put in their face, like
But they don't see that.
demonstrated to them. Right.
Yeah, and the plurality that they are saying that they're trying to uphold, maybe, is just it's just not being there. It's just if you on government property, if you are going to allow a display from one specific group, you need to be able to allow all other groups to also
Yeah,
do
exactly.
their displays.
Precisely.
And if you don't, then it's a freedom of speech. And unfortunately, it took 6 years for the Texas government or the Texas courts to figure that out.
I did want to mention, it bothers me how the term freedom of speech is just so flippantly used when,
Mm.
one side over the other, or both sides even, try to, reference that to just make their point or make their case.
Mhm.
It's written in our Constitution, the level of freedom of speech and freedom of, expression and religion, non-religion, things like that. But, you know, there are certain situations and cases where your speech is not free. There are
Right.
sure you can
Oh
say,
yeah, there's
believe,
limitations.
do Exactly.
Mhm.
You can say, believe, and do whatever you want, but you better know there are consequences behind what you say, do, and sometimes even believe.
And sometimes the government can punish you for what you say. So it's not
Exactly.
totally free.
Exactly.
And so I'm
Yeah.
kind of 50-50 on one thing about it. Maybe you all
Mhm.
can weigh in and let me know what you think. But on the one hand, you have them saying, oh, but by using the nativity layout and having the founding fathers around the Constitution, that's a mockery. And it's saying that we worship the Constitution. So on the one end, like there's the argument of mockery. And on the other end, um, there's the freedom to express themselves. And so I guess my question is, could could they have done a different display that still celebrates the holiday, the idea of maybe like the winter or renewal or whatever? I guess my question is, do you think that the layout of the display
Hmm.
bears any
So,
mention whatsoever? Because I think
so
it's freedom of
mhm.
speech, right? You should be able to do whatever you want. You should be able to mock,
Mhm.
right?
So
So what
now
are your
you're
thoughts on that?
Yeah, so now you're trying to say, oh, instead of saying Merry Christmas, just say Happy Holidays. You know their argument about that. Like you're trying to tie
Yeah.
down the God out of it. You're watering down the God out of it. That's what you're essentially doing. That's the argument on that side there. You
Struggling
know,
to see
and
the problem with that.
I guess what I'm
right,
trying to say is
exactly.
whether it's a mockery or not shouldn't make any difference, I guess is what I'm saying, right? Like what
Yeah.
do you guys think about it? Should it have been different because it was mocking, or should it have gone through no matter what?
So like a less antagonistic secular display is what you're proposing might have been a better
No,
idea?
I love
Or
mockery.
okay.
I like if they were deliberately mocking, I'm all
Yeah,
about
I'm
it. I'm
fine.
saying like yeah, but what I was wondering is what your guys' thoughts were on that. Like, does the fact that it seemed to be mocking bear any sort of weight with you guys?
I think it does. In that it is as with other art forms of artistic expression, what they were trying to do was um, t- show a reverence to that the Freedom from Religion Foundation has to the founding principles of this nation. And by putting that in context of the nativity scene at the state capitol, with that beside it, I think um, sends a really strong message, and that is what they were wanting to say.
Mhm.
So in because that is what they were trying to say, it's then it's that's what makes it effective. That's what makes it good art, if it
Mhm.
can
Hmm.
consider it good art.
Yeah,
I
It
mean,
yeah,
elicits
it's a,
some emotion or some reaction.
yeah,
Exactly,
yeah.
yeah. And I like the
you
way
know,
that
yeah.
that you framed that. Oh, go ahead, Jenna.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, yeah, I agree with you, Laura. I do like how you frame that multi because I was just thinking, there's so many ideas that the FFRF could have displayed instead of, the founding fathers with the, Liberty statue. It could have been a more direct, explicit mock of, the Christian faith, where instead of baby Jesus, it's baby Satan, and what is it? The devil and Satan is born from a goat or whatever. It could
Mm.
have been more explicit and more offensive, but they didn't
Oh,
take that. They didn't take that road, right? They, the Republican or the conservative right are so adamant about, upholding the Constitution and upholding the laws that were founded by our forefathers. Well, we're displaying the fucking forefathers and the Liberty statue. What's so wrong about that?
hmm
And we're also making the statement that as secular people, as non-religious people, that we still have values and that we value our constitution and that we value
Right.
our nation's values, like in our principles, right? And so it kind of makes that statement of we don't need the Jesus figure, but we still uphold some strong values.
Maybe if there was a AK-47 attached to it, I don't know. Never mind.
oh, with
Bad joke.
yeah,
Then it would
Sorry.
be
yeah,
done.
right. Statue of Liberty with
Holding an
An
AK.
AK.
holding an AK. That's it.
I like it.
Wonder what you aim it for.
All right. Well, yeah. So please take a look at the article and the actual ruling for the court order. It is actually worth a read when you look at what the court is telling Abbott and his friends what they can and cannot do, must and will not do in the future.
But don't
So
mess with Texas, am I right?
that's
Oh, yeah.
right.
He even
Don't
said
mess with
that.
Texas.
He even
Right.
said that.
Mhm.
Like, oh, we're gonna win. Don't mess with Texas. Well, that
Right.
works out really great for you. Good
Yeah,
job.
back in right when they pulled it down, or maybe it was when the next year when they tried to put it up again and they were refused. Abbott did say that, and
Yeah.
now he has lost his
Apparently, you can mess with
suit.
Texas.
Oh boy.
In the courts too.
Yeah,
All
fighting
right.
words.
So our next article is about a friend of ours from
Our
all
best friend.
for one of our best
So good.
friends, one of our
Besties.
televangelist friends, Jim Bakker. Katie, can you tell us about Jim Bakker and if he's been in trouble again?
Jim Bakker's in a little bit of trouble. Basically, what happened was he was selling a cure for COVID. As I hope we all know, there isn't one. But donate $80 to Jim Bakker, and they'll send you, this silver solutions. And I believe they said it hasn't been tested against every strain, but it has been known to kill. Was it HIV and SARS? Kills it within
Kills it.
what was it, 12 hours? Yeah, just kills it. So
Mhm.
understandably, there's some lawsuits in the works. He's violated what law? A
So
lot.
there was, yeah, is it New York State and the state of Missouri?
Missouri,
Have,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah, and they're facing bankruptcy, and yeah, they need your tithes now more than ever. They're potentially losing their airtime. They're facing bankruptcy. Courts are getting involved. So yeah, good job, Jim. I don't know. It baffles me. How could you possibly think you can sell a cure for something that, first of all, you have claimed isn't real?
That right there.
Right?
And
There
second
it
of all,
is.
how could you possibly think you can sell a cure for something that has not been verified, FDA approved to be a cure? Like, how could that possibly work out well for you? How?
Oh, yeah.
Someone help me out here, because I
Because
don't get it.
because he's a criminal, and they will go to all kinds of different ends to make whatever money they
Mhm.
can. Like, in his sociopathic world, what he's doing is A-okay.
And he
Oh.
served time in federal prison,
Right?
I believe.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. For
Yeah,
I
for
don't
those
think
of you,
he got the point.
No,
He
he
didn't
didn't.
learn. Send him back.
yeah.
Didn't
Wanna
get the
go back.
message.
So for those of you that weren't around in the 80s, mid 80s to mid 90s, Jim Bakker had sold like 500,000 memberships to this hotel
Yeah.
complex that he's building, and
Whoa.
he built one building that would hold 500 people and took the rest of the money and spent it on himself and the ministry and things like that. So he
Hmm.
was, yes, he was jailed for accounting fraud. It was supposedly going to be a 45-year sentence and a $500,000 fine. Unfortunately, the judge during his sentencing brought religion into his statement of sentencing, saying
dang.
Yeah,
those, and because of that, it was reduced from 45 years down to 8 years.
right. And then
He
he even took
was,
all that.
yeah, and so
But he's
now
reformed, guys.
he's back
Oh,
out,
yeah.
and maybe, but now maybe not, maybe debtor's prison would
I
be
mean, we don't have to worry about him. He's like a good holy man. He totally reformed. We're fine, guys.
Oh yeah. Oh
to
yeah.
But what
ask
does
his
that
ex-wife.
what does that
Go
say
ahead.
either about him or about the justice system? Like, him in the sense of what he's willing to go through
Mhm.
to get what it is that he wants, whether it's money, which I'm sure it's money, or
Yeah.
whether it's also like the worship and the followership, which I think he probably gets off on too. But also,
Mhm.
what does it say about our justice
Oh,
system? That it's like, oh, he's a religious
yeah,
person, or oh, it's a religious matter. We're going to reduce the sentence. And then when he's back at it again, there's no
yeah.
instant recourse for nope, and then yank that chain
How
back
many
and give him the 45 years. No.
how many cases have there been where the judge has been like, you know what, this person, this guilty person they don't have a faith in God, therefore I think they're less of a threat. I'm gonna reduce their sentence since they don't have faith in God. Has that ever happened that we know of?
Right. And add to that, how many cases have we not gone through where we're not sworn in on a fucking Bible?
Well,
So
and
help
so
me God.
why aren't people like politicians and religious people held to an even higher standard? I know it's a rhetorical question. We don't actually have to answer it. But like, come on, these people are supposed to be like leaders and the people who are setting the example. And instead of getting off easy or getting reduced sentences, they should be the ones getting held to the highest standard.
Yeah, you would think. And this God, this type of story just makes me cringe because, as a nurse myself, like just hearing what's going on. Mind you, this type of issue going on with Jim stems from early last year when COVID initially started, sometime in April, or well, in reference to this, sometime in April, where he had this magical solution of silver solution. By the way, horrible name. Um, it it makes me just cringe and just it on every level as as a professional in the medical field. It's just you try your best to stress the facts and encourage and educate patients on what's the real truth, um and to promote this type of fake cure or make people pay for a fake vaccine, or actually getting the real vaccine but actually getting a profit from it, which FYI, nowhere in the world should you freaking have to buy the COVID vaccine. If someone tries
Right.
to sell it to you, please, memo, if someone tries to sell you the
Probably a
vaccine,
scam.
Don't pay
don't.
for it.
Thank you. It's free for everyone. Don't pay for that shit. Anyways, even with the COVID testing. So to have this being done, and like you had referenced, Katie, oh, they have no belief that even COVID exists. Yeah. Oh, we're gonna sell you the solution just in case.
Yeah. I guess,
What?
yeah. If it's not real, why are you selling the solution? Why?
And exactly. And
Jenna, go ahead.
yes.
Well, I have a
No.
question for you. You're a nurse. Are you allowed to show preferential treatment to patients based on religious belief, their religious beliefs, your religious beliefs, their potential lack of beliefs? Why are our judges? Why are our judges allowed to do that? Can we
Yeah,
just talk about this
absolutely not.
discrimination a little bit more?
Oh, let's do it. Let's get back
Yes.
into it. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
No, absolutely not. The
I mean,
organization I work for practice inclusivity at that full meaning of that word, no matter the background, culture, race, gender, sexuality, whatever, and no matter any of that, you treat that patient, as you're supposed to treat them, with the highest possible, commitment to them, advocating for their care, and everything else in between of that. So no
Jenna,
preferential treatment.
what would happen if you had a patient and you tried to sell them your personal cure for whatever they have going on? Would that be okay, Jenna?
Well, let me tell you. No.
Yeah. She's like,
No.
actually.
Since you mention it. No, it's kidding. No, absolutely not. I'd be terminated immediately and possibly sued.
Would you lose
No,
your
I would be sued.
license? Yeah. Well, could you possibly be jailed?
Oh, yeah, of course. Because I'm posing intentional harm.
Jim
That's
Bakker,
negligence.
we got news
Um,
for you.
that's
Yeah.
malpractice. That's
So
negligence.
that
That's all
that
that
gets
stuff.
into a huge double standard that I was also curious about, not in terms of like I love how you drew it between the medical community and what he's doing, but when I read the articles, I actually drew that same sort of double standard between just a regular company selling anything that they claim does anything and a religious or new age or spiritual company selling these spiritual cures or whatever. So
Right.
there's a huge double standard when you can sell things like essential oils as cures for this or that, or crystals as doing this or that, or
Mhm.
Yeah.
silver to a religious congregation as curing COVID. And it's not immediately shut down. Like you can't even go up on stage and talk anymore. You got to shut your store down until all that shit is wiped clean, until you've apologized and clarified. Like, why is there this double standard between, say, a company like CVS, right, that has to have all these different medications, have to have FDA approval, but this guy up on stage that owns like a religious foundation can sell whatever the heck he wants? And maybe just get like like he's
As a
just now
good
getting.
right.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, as a good friend of mine would say, "Can I go ahead and tax the church now?
I
Can we
mean,
tax
Yeah.
them now?
obviously they're
Can
making
we
And
tax them now? Now that
We
they've
tax
done
them
this,
now?
can we tax them now? Yeah.
well, they're facing bankruptcy, so good luck with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And relating it to just even more scarier of an issue to me, even hearing more about this and more other news of, fake cures and people having to purchase vaccines and things like that that are in themselves fake. In relation to like the medical community and how detrimentally abhorrent there was a time where Black people were, you know, um, totally against medical treatment and
Mhm.
medical field as a whole because of
Yeah.
events in history and treatment, which
Yeah.
again
Yeah.
there is no good side to it.
Right. The
um
Tuskegee experiments. Yeah.
right,
Oh yeah,
and
yep.
various other things that
But
are
we need to
not
teach the
even
good, the bad, and the ugly.
right.
Yeah.
Precisely.
The good is that it
But
ended. I mean, we could teach that.
Oh
yes.
yeah,
Yeah, we
there
can.
you go.
And I do like that. I heard that the miracle mineral cure guys, the guys that were selling the industrial bleach solution for a
Mm.
cure-all, have now been jailed.
That's
Yeah.
good news.
Hopefully, we'll be spending a really long time. Cease and desist notification. Dear Mr. Baker, the New
Mm.
York State Office of the Attorney General is extremely concerned by certain statements made during your February 12th, 2020 screening of the Jim Bakker Show. And it goes on to say, exactly what was said on the
Mhm.
show and why it was problematic, let's just say. Oh,
Mm.
gosh, and yeah, the very truly yours, Lisa Landau, Chief Healthcare Bureau. So they have shut down his ability. Oh, yes. So if you were thinking of donating to Jim, you can only do it in cash now because all of his other ways of payment have been shut down.
But there's better places to donate your money. Just don't do it.
There are.
Yeah,
There
don't
are.
do it.
Just wanted to let you know before you tried to help him out that it's going to be kind of tough doing so, and that's one of the reasons why he's facing bankruptcy is because his cash flow has now gone to nothing.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
So, I mean, in a way that's really good. It's good that these people are little by little being held accountable and that something is being done about this in this
Mhm.
case. The fact that it happened again after he's already swindled people is mind-boggling. But so my big question is like, so the headline itself was really discouraging to me. It says Baker fears bankruptcy. It doesn't say Baker's going bankrupt or
Yeah.
Baker faces jail time or hey, Baker is going back to jail. It's like, oh, he might
I'm
he
so
he's
glad you said that.
afraid. He's afraid he might go
Oh,
bankrupt.
I
And so
missed
if
that
yeah,
subtle
yeah.
difference. Yeah.
And
I'm
so
so
even
glad
though
you
I
caught that and said that.
oh,
Yeah.
it bothers me because even though it mentions litigation and stuff, it really makes me feel like he's just going to get off scot-free and that his congregation is going to pay for all his law fees and he's going to keep
Well, he's
getting
a
money
good
in
Christian
cash.
man,
And it's
Laura.
just right. I should know
Yeah.
better.
The article
Yeah.
is already setting itself up before you even get to the
Yes.
heart of it as, oh, you should automatically feel sympathy based on this title. Now read.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sympathetic now. He's going back to jail. Oh no. Come
All he did
on.
was sell a fake cure for
Right.
a fake disease.
And
And
don't get me wrong, but
no, go for it. Yeah.
I was gonna say,
Fake
don't get me
fire,
wrong, but it
sorry.
does when you get into reading the article, it does kind of say what he's facing, and it is a little bit more serious than what the headline says. But it
Mhm.
does kind of give you that feeling that it is really being downplayed as not such a big deal, and that eventually it'll all get worked out, and that he'll get off scot free.
Right,
hmm.
right. And I can see how, I fully have listened and understand, the reasonings behind, people holding on to, the magic of, rocks and cures or taking more vitamin D or just simply just not doing anything at all and relying on God and saying, God favors me and he has this blanket magic over me and he will protect me from getting COVID, blah, 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 blah. And, that's, you know what?
Prove it.
That's fine. Do you? But the harm really poses a detriment when, minorities in this country or anywhere else in the world for that matter cling on to this ideal, are swayed into believing that if they do this thing instead of actually protecting themselves, social distancing, getting tested, getting their vaccine, they're doing all this woo bullshit that we will continue to be in this perpetual state of not getting any better.
So you bring up a really, really good point there. Like, the whole article is about how he misrepresented a product, or he's getting people's money in a dishonest way, and that's terrible enough as it is. But it doesn't even go into the physical harm that these people are coming to by putting something in their body that they don't really understand what it does or under what
Right.
conditions it's helpful or harmful, and then B, they're not getting the proper measures to help themselves with COVID, or they feel protected and they feel maybe emboldened when really they shouldn't be. So my question is, and I didn't see any indication of this in any of the articles, was what about the physical harm done to these people, and how do they even measure that?
Yeah, has a product has it even been shown to be safe?
Right, I have no idea.
I don't know.
That I
know what,
don't know.
And I
um,
raise you and say they don't fucking care. It's the money.
so I had a very mild case of COVID. Um, and if I was somebody who thought, oh, I've been cured, since I did have such a mild case, I wonder how many people are like, oh, I don't feel bad anymore. I think this, silver solutions cured me. I can go out. I don't have to wear a mask. I can, like, everything's good.
Like a false
So
correlation. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there is some, unfortunately, I think a lot of people who might be swayed by this type of fraudster are looking for a simple solution,
That's
Um,
what it should have been named.
yeah, a simple solution. Well, see yeah, I don't know. But even if it's between a a magic solution that takes care of everything and then you don't have to worry about it versus being an adult and dealing with the situation as an adult, taking the precautions and continually working on this. Yes, there's a lot of fatigue, COVID fatigue, and people, as I'm walking around, as I'm going to the grocery store, those masks are getting lower and lower around the nose, and
Or
Yeah.
aren't there at all.
or not there at all,
Mhm.
hanging off one ear. And if I glare at them long enough, they might put it up. I mean, sorry, I'm immunosuppressed, so I'm a
Right.
little bit triggered by it, right?
For sure.
But so yeah, it just infuriates me that he would. Well, I'm infuriated that he would do it, but I'm also it makes me have some hope when I see the Attorney General of New York, when I see the Missouri state attorney general both going after this guy, saying, you're breaking the law and we are going to come after you. Same with like the magic mineral cure guys. Whereas now that there's been a change in the administration, and the attorney general has now been, what did Biden say? He's not my attorney general. He is the country's attorney general. And so I think the attorney generals of these states have now been given the freedom to do their job. And so, I mean, it gives me a little bit of hope.
Certainly. Well said.
I wasn't super surprised though. Like when you were saying, "Oh yeah, this infuriates me." Yeah, it's infuriating. Is it super surprising? Is anyone surprised?
No.
I'm not.
Given like
Not at all.
his history, not because he's like a televangelist, not that I trust televangelists, but just given his history.
Right.
Mhm.
And further, just to set aside, being in this the age of COVID, the people like this have been doing this for years, centuries, in many different ways, shapes, and forms. With, like I referenced, magic woo crystals and special ointments or holy water or whatever, anointing. Like hell, my ass was anointed at 2 and baptized twice. That shit didn't work, obviously. So to this practice, holding on to this practice and, demonstrating itself as it being the true cure, the true way to get to heaven, or the true way to be closer to your God, or, being enlightened, whatever. It's it intoxifies, people so heavily that they become so far removed from actual critical thinking and science-based evidence and facts that, that's why we have this huge gap, and even more broadened through social media. And it's just, I find it, impossible to bring that all together, but also still hopeful that there's still folks like us that, relay the truth and try to fight for those that cannot,
Mhm.
and teach them better.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So,
Well, um, if we have nothing more to talk about with Mr. Bakker, we can move on to our final subject of the evening. This would be our looking back segment.
Looking back.
So this week's looking back is talking about Bertram Russell, who was born on May 18th. What is the date of his year of birth?
1872.
Thank you, Katie.
Anytime.
Yeah.
right
So
over
Bertrand
there.
Russell, he, I think what he is most well known for, at least in the atheist community, is his teapot. And in that he's was really pushing for the idea that the burden of proof lies upon the person that is making the unfalsifiable claim, rather than shifting the burden of proof. So, yeah, he's been an interesting guy. He, again, born 1872, died 1970. So, lived through a very poignant time in the U.S. Was against war, against the use of the atomic weapons.
Yeah.
Was a very interesting person.
Yeah,
Anybody else have? Go
well,
ahead,
he was
Katie.
a mathematician, philosopher. He was, a sexual liberty advocate. He sounded really cool. Honestly, I'd have a beer with him if I could. Yeah, he wrote why I'm not a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
right.
I
Yeah.
added it to my Amazon cart because after I was reading about him, I was like, oh, he seems cool. And can I make a really embarrassing confession here? You mentioned Russell's teapot, and I've heard like the Atheist Experience reference it before. I thought they were talking about Russell Glasser.
Now that you said that, probably would have made that reference too.
Laura, that was a former host, just to let you know.
Yeah.
Oh, I think Laura may be frozen, so that's why
Yes.
I'm not
I'm
seeing.
probably just gonna ignore it.
I just thought she was just. I didn't get the joke.
It's fun.
I just assumed we were
Okay, we'll
ignoring
be
it.
getting her back. Oh no. Okay, well, we'll be getting Laura back here
Bring her back on.
momentarily. So yeah, the Russell's teapot, or the celestial teapot, cosmic teapot, refuting the idea that the burden of proof lies upon the skeptic, whether general or of religion. I had thought that when I was looking into this and looking into Russell's teapot specifically, I thought maybe I'll need to see what theists, what their refutes are to the teapot, just to see if I can get a better understanding of. There's Laura. Welcome back.
Hello, thank you.
Okay, you
I'm
didn't
just
miss
listening and
much.
getting caught back up. Yeah, no
Okay.
worries.
So did you hear Katie do
Oh
her?
God.
I did
Someone's
not
gonna
know.
clip that. Oh God, so
I'm gonna go
embarrassing.
back and listen to the segment that I missed because I'm super excited to see what you guys
You
talked about.
should. You should.
Bertrand's teapot and yeah.
Yeah. So no,
Bertrand Russell.
Bertrand
to
Russell.
clarify.
Very
Right.
good.
So when I was looking at, some of the things that these theists are saying is that it doesn't work, his analogy, because you're talking about a physical object. One of the refutations. It's not analogous because God is a metaphysical being and a teapot is a physical item. So you can't compare a metaphysical thing with a physical thing. Which for me was a little bit strange since I was never a theist. The whole idea of what metaphysical is doesn't really make much sense to me. So for those that were theists, can you help me out in understanding what you thought back then, what metaphysical meant to you when you were theists, if you had kind of an understanding?
I don't think we use that language, so I might not be much help here. I do my best to speculate, but
Yeah, no, same. That was never, I mean, I guess I've heard the term, but that's never been a fervent preached type of daily used term when I was a believer. And, we don't even use the word being a theist for that matter. We just,
oh no.
we're just, believers. That was simply
Children
that.
of God.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Okay.
think in I this drew a thought to me as you were talking on this multi that I've kind of separated the categories of faith of people into three. One level
Mm,
of it being that casual believer where, that typical one that only goes on certain holidays or, they think there's something there and may pray or not. They're just pretty casual about it. And then you have the, regular believer where they're regular attenders of church and, they partake in fellowship and things like that, pray often, speak, um, you know, make it known that they're a believer, but not so, hard hitting on like the more logical arguments and deep concepts of metaphysical blah blah hoopla, like the third category, which is the hyperbolic or extreme believer or theist, which that's how I kind of separated those kind of categories into those three little like link trees of what level of theist you recognize yourself. And I guess for me in my past was that middle ground. So all the
mm.
overarching arguments of of a metaphysical and not comparing God to something real, never heard of that.
Hmm.
So I would say I've never, like, while I was Christian and Muslim, I never used the term metaphysical in reference to God himself, but I was familiar with metaphysical and what it meant.
Hmm.
And I would have used it more in terms of feeling or philosophy, like I had like a metaphysical experience or something.
Oh
Oh,
no. Yep.
oh.
And
Yeah,
a metaphysical. Go ahead,
I
Katie.
was gonna say it like I would think it probably has to do with like the Holy Spirit. It's
Hmm.
not like it's not a physical being, but it has power over, the natural world somehow. Confusing concept. That's my best guess, but I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason that I'm asking this is I'm trying to get a better understanding of where say someone who's a Christian, a Muslim might be coming from to help with the communication. I am such a show me a physical representation of what you're talking about so I can, pick it up and feel it and see it and understand what you're meaning. And they go about talking about things that I can't investigate.
Yeah.
It makes it really
As far as we
difficult
know,
for me
neither
to.
can they.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to be able to
I can't
understand.
investigate the moon, but
Well,
other
right,
people can.
and this kind of brings me to one of the other refutations that that I had found, which was the problem they said with Russell's teapot is that his choice of the teapot in his example was a biased biased his conclusion. So what they were saying is, you don't know what the interior of the sun looks like, but you wouldn't imagine that there is no interior of the sun. So in the same way, if there is this teapot that you can't find that's in an elliptical orbit around that sun, it doesn't make any sense to say that it couldn't be there, or we should feel like, or we should take it as granted that it just is not there because it cannot in any way affect your life.
At least we know
when I
teapots exist, and we know things orbit the
exactly
sun.
exactly
Right.
So I
Measurable
mean,
things.
I have used a similar discussion tactic with someone that was saying, that the whole thing, what is it, the argument from ignorance, in that, he was saying, yeah, the universe is so big, you can't prove that God doesn't exist. And and I would say, well, I know the
Can you
moon
prove he
exists.
does?
I know that
Yeah.
the dark side of the moon exists, and I know that there are craters on the moon. But if I'm taking your logic, then I would have to say that there's a possibility, non-zero, that there's some moldy monster on a dark side of the moon. So unless you can tell me that the moon is not made of moldy monster, then I think that your analogy just breaks down in the same way. Anyway,
It does.
what did you find about Russell, and or found interesting about not Mr. Glasser?
Not Mr. Glasser? Yes. No, there was a lot that I drew away from particular quotes from the site in which we drew our knowledge about Mr. Bertrand Russell. And I'll reference some of them too, because I found them very poignant in recent conversation I've had, and things I've thought about as far as reflecting on my past belief. And one of the quotes is, I will pretty much say, religions which condemn the pleasures of sense drive men to seek the pleasures of power. And I can recount recently on the fan server of the ACA, the ACD server, that there was a conversation being had of a particular, well, I should say there was a conversation surrounding um, the meaning or the demand of fairness from incels. And this is like a term I've never even heard before. But basically, they were arguing that in order for there to be a level of fairness, um, one is privileged to demand certain things from certain individuals. So, in reference to the quote, where it speaks of religion, which condemns pleasures of sense, drives them to seek pleasures of power. The drive of a religion enforcing, a belief and condemning them out of certain sinful drives furthers their push to want to seek or demand or feel like they're owed power from other people with or without consent. I found that quote very interesting and just kind of pointed that to that conversation. And another quote here that I took kind of personally was, I quote, "I say quite deliberately that the Christian religion is based, I think, primarily and mainly upon fear. It is partly the terror of the unknown. Fear is the basis of the whole thing. Fear of the mysterious, fear of defeat, fear of death. Fear is the parent of cruelty." And one heavy, um, I guess you can say, belief within the Black church culture is that, you know, women, for instance, that are praised to be God fearing, not God fearing, God fearing
God-fearing.
women, God fearing, yes. They are the most virtuous. They are the most moral and the most obedient to, God's word, both within marriage and pre-marriage. And notice I emphasize, not without
Pre-marriage.
marriage. No, you
Yeah.
have to be
Pre-marriage.
married. It's
You'll
pre-marriage.
get married,
It's the time
whether you
before
want
you
to
get
or
married.
not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Until then, no sex. Basically that. it's, the notion that, a God-fearing woman,
Mhm.
strongly takes up her Bible and sticks by her man no matter what, and believes in her faith strong enough to hold herself up as virtuous with no level of leadership whatsoever, mind you. But the mentality that drives religion to enact this, statement of fear just, pushes the suppression of people that aren't men, basically. And so that likeness in which, it drives the notion of, divorce is non-existent and singleness should remain pure no matter the
Mhm.
case or situation, and no man would want them if their body is sullied, and no woman can amount to upholding a household on her own.
Mm,
So saying these statements, how religion has driven this terror and fear of defeat and fear of death and fear of everything else, fear of not being married, fear of not having children. It just it that spoke to me heavily, and I've seen it not only in the reflection of my own life growing up, but even in the reflection of my immediate family and the reflection of my church family, which I do still love. But a lot of that weight in that Black church is carried, and this quote truly spoke to that. It was beautiful.
I think you bring up
hmm
two really good points, and they're two completely different points, but they both
Mhm.
kind of tie together very beautifully. And the first one is the idea that when you start taking away some of the things that people desire, then they start desiring power. And I think there's a more subtle, more nuanced conversation to have than that. It makes it sound very, very black and white, and it kind of
Mhm.
makes non-Christians sound very like hedonistic, like we're just seeking pleasures. But what I think the more nuanced conversation to be had is that we have strong animal like impulses and desires and needs and wants, and how we initiate those or how we act them out is important. Like you don't rape, but you can have good sexual relationships, right? So there's still a good and bad with or without religion. But when you start putting a bottle on all of these things where you're not allowed to do certain things, you're not allowed to express certain normal human expressions, and you're not allowed to feel certain normal human feelings, it does start to oppress that individual, and people do act out in different
Exactly.
ways, and they do, like what you said, they become cruel or they become controlling or they become abusive, or they do that to themselves, like a woman who puts themselves in that situation where I'm going to be
Yes.
married to my husband, I'm going to do the right thing. She may never abuse or do anything unkind to another human being, but she's
Yep.
abusing herself. And same with the men, of course. But I'm just saying, in that exact situation that you're giving. And
Right.
then what you said about the fear, um, when you teach someone to be driven by fear, you can control them to do a lot of different things, right? And so people teach about the love of Jesus, but when you really start to talk to them and boil it down, you're right. It's the fear of hell or the fear of rejection or the fear of doing the wrong thing.
Right.
And like to me that right there is a big red flag of what loving God loves a person and cares for a person through fear.
It's just
Love
another
me or
form of control.
else.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
What's
not
that?
abuse at all.
What's that meme? Knock, knock, knock. Let me in. Why? So I can save you from
From
what?
who? Me?
From what I'm going to do to you if you don't let me in? Yeah.
Oh God.
Boom. Right.
Yeah.
Katie, did you have what was your thoughts on Bertram?
I actually highlighted one of my different quote, but one that I loved. You find as you look around the world that every single bit of progress in humane feeling, every improvement in the criminal law, every step toward the discriminate. I'm sorry, dominion. Sorry,
Dominionism. Yeah, it's a word.
of word. Yes, of war.
It's a word.
Every step toward a better treatment of the colored races, every moral progress that has been in the world has been consistently opposed and organized churches, or has been consistently opposed by organized churches of the world. That feels true.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
picked up that same quote, and it goes on to say, I say quite deliberately that the Christian religion has been and still is the principal enemy of moral progress around the world.
Mm,
Yeah,
And that is very
ma'am.
poignant because the whole teaching of Christianity is that we are the moral high ground, but we're going to morally oppress this person, and we're going to oppress that person, and we're going
mhm.
to hurt this person. We're going to not allow you to do this. right?
Mhm.
And that's true. It has been the enemy of progress every step of the way.
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
It feels like always.
And
Yeah.
so Bertram Russell, pacifist, champion of anti-imperialism, prevention of nuclear war. He went to prison in World War One
Yeah,
because
for
of
protesting
for
the with
protesting.
nuclear weapons, right?
Right.
Or
World War One, so
oh,
for
yeah, okay.
protesting the war. But I mean,
Right.
he did say that World War Two was necessary, the lesser of two evils. The U.S. coming into it because Hitler.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it was
yeah,
worth intervening.
yeah. So when I think I'm gonna have to get Why I'm Not a Christian as well on my Amazon
Yeah, it's in my cart.
right now.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Very
All
Yeah.
right.
inspirational quotes and his writings, the logic and the critical thinking and everything that he advocated for is almost in a sense beyond his time,
Mhm.
almost. So
Yeah.
yeah, very inspirational.
So I wanted to
Wonderful.
learn a little bit more. Oh, go ahead.
Go, yes, please, Laura.
Okay, I was gonna say I wanted to learn a little bit more about him, so I went and looked him up in the Stanford Encyclopedia, and it actually has quite a few details on him, and it like partitions different sections of his life and different contributions that he made. But one thing that I really, really appreciated about him specifically is how, and like what you said, Jenna, about him being ahead of his time a little bit. He really
Mm.
demystified religion and made the conversation of religion and the discussion of its intricacies really available to the common public. So whereas
Mm,
before religion belonged like at the pulpit and like you were told what to believe for religion, you didn't really
right.
question it or research it. He really his work and his activism empowered people to learn more about religion. So I mean whether they stayed religious or not is like a whole another subject of discussion, but just the movement toward being allowed to have the discussion in the first place.
Right.
He's credited as sort of like starting that off, and
Right.
he's really responsible for a lot of public interest in the discussion of religion, and that I thought was really cool.
Being very
Hmm.
outspoken to try and normalize the conversation.
Normalizing, that's a good
And
word. Yeah.
we appreciate it. However
Yeah.
many years. I think he died like 50 years ago.
1970. Yeah.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel like 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And we appreciate it. 50 years later. Speaking
Yeah.
for myself, anyway.
Certainly.
Well, I think that leads us just about to the end of our episode. We've gone over a good amount of stuff. Louisiana lawmaker arguing that schools must teach the good of slavery and showing how that education needs to continue and be not whitewashed. We talked about the Freedom from Religion Foundation and how Governor Abbott got messed with and got messed with good.
Sucker.
Uh, yeah, Jim Bakker maybe going back to debtor's prison. There's no
Sucker.
such thing.
Ah.
Yeah, Bertram Russell, what a guy. I really like him. I think I need a teapot on a t-shirt.
I like it.
That would be good.
Yes.
So, Katie, thank you so much for coming and joining us
Thank you for
today.
having me. It was fun.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
learned about a lot of different things. So
Mhm.
it was time well
Hopefully,
spent.
Oh
we can
yeah.
have you back
Nice.
here. I know
Yeah.
you have a
Yeah.
busy schedule, but
Yeah.
we'd love to have you back sometime.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Anything that you're doing you want to promote,
Oh,
or I can come back to you. I'll swing back around at the after the end.
other ACA shows.
Sure.
Go watch Secular Sexuality. Go watch Truth Wanted. Go
Yes.
watch Talk Heathen. Go watch the Atheist Experience. Watch more nonprofits. Like, subscribe, turn on notifications for all those things.
There you go. She's
Thank you,
natural.
Malty.
I love it.
Jenna, what are you up to?
Uh, I work and go to school full time and, have time to do this with all of you. And that's, important to me. It helps me mentally and sometimes even physically to just allow me to sit somewhere and actually have intelligent conversations. So, I'm here and
Yeah.
I enjoy it every week.
Thank you. Thank you for these discussions. I feel the same way. It really does help me both physically and mentally to be able to have these discussions. Laura, thank
Yes.
you
Oh
for,
no, thank you guys for having me again.
yeah,
I feel like you
of
guys can't
course.
get rid of me these days.
Nope,
Oh, no,
we're going to keep you.
definitely not.
That's
Yeah.
it. So you have Skeptically Me still going on?
Oh no, so yeah, it's unapologetically me.
Oh,
I have
Unapologetically Me. I
Yeah,
apologize.
I have been so busy doing this kind of stuff that I haven't uploaded brand new videos to Unapologetically Me. But I have been doing a weekly podcast, The Skeptic Hangout, and that's been my regular thing. So
Okay.
check me out at both places, but yeah, Skeptic Hangout has the freshest stuff going on.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right. So I'll close us out by saying, like Katie said, like, subscribe, join all the things,
Oh, and the
support the show.
AN podcast channel. Sorry,
Yes.
I'm done now.
Yes. We have the YouTube channel, the AEN podcast channel, Atheist Experience Network. You can go there at tiny.cc tiny.cc/AEN podcasts to listen to the episodes of all your ACA shows. Join all of our fan groups for all the shows, especially the nonprofits. Like and subscribe. As I said, join us at the ACA Discord. I hope to see you there while we premiere the show at 3 p.m. Central on Sunday. Um, if you'd like to get in touch with us, you can do so at nonprofits@atheist-community.org. And again, I'd like to thank all of my hosts for joining me, and the production crew, of course, for if they weren't there in the back and doing all the hard work, all the heavy lifting, we wouldn't be able to be out here in front of you guys. So thank you, crew. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Johnny.
Thank you,
All
Jason.
right. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye and have a wonderful afternoon.